Nyx, and you are watching Drake Nyx Vision. I'm an intuitive and soul guide, and I help people just like you tap into their purpose and passion, bring it out into the world, and make the planet a better place while you're at it. This week, I wanted to piggyback on last week's video where I segued into this idea of parallel realities. And I thought that it is a subject that deserves a little bit more exploration. It's probably something that will come up multiple times as I teach. And so I wanted to explore a basic foundation about how this is a relevant idea that we can actually take and incorporate into our everyday life. I know that there are probably a lot of different directions that I can go with this because the complexity is infinity, but I'm primarily going to focus on the ways that it impacts right here and now and how I see that leading us into the future for better or for worse, depending on which type of reality you choose to embody and live and grow in your day-to-day life. I know the idea of parallel reality seems kind of out there and a little bit sci-fi, but it's actually not that hard to really wrap your mind about how that can be possible. So recently I was watching a channeling by Bashar, and somebody was asking about this idea of how parallel realities can exist. And Bashar brought up how right there in that place and time and space in that room, all the people in the room, he asked the guy, are they having the same reality? And the guy was like, well, yeah, but that is not the case. Each person that came to the room was actually living a very different reality because the makeup of how they perceive the world is very different based on how they grew up and the very unique things that make them them. Another example, just a little bit ago, I was sitting at my desk and then my dogs wanted to go outside. I'm like, okay. So I let them outside, and as I was coming back in, I looked down and there was a massive spider, just so large. And I have really been trying to practice compassion and love and empathy towards creatures, beings outside of myself. And so I'm like, okay, I don't want this thing next to my desk because no. But also I want it to live and thrive and have a good life, so I'm going to move it outside. I was able to move it outside, and it took a lot for me to get it off the rag that I had brought it out with, but eventually it did. And in my mind, I actually was pretty okay. I just didn't want it to crawl on me while I was not expecting it, and I wanted it to be outside where it belonged. At the same time, that creature, I could tell, was experiencing a lot of fear. And I know a lot of people would jump to having fear within their own bodies, but at the same time, often spiders are actually more afraid of us because we are very large and we could hurt them easily. In that moment, I could have chosen to kill it, but I did not. So in that moment, that creature is having a far different experience than me. If we're going to take it a little bit farther, that creature, if we're talking about a spider, it has lots of eyeballs. Its way of seeing the world around it very different. Its priorities and what guides it very different from my own. It has internal instincts that help it to hunt and to survive. And so it is constantly working from this different template of what reality is and its primary function. Human beings are just the same. Each one of us step into the world and have a different prerogative. I really love coaching people and running workshops and running events and helping people to become leaders. That's what I'm about. But somebody else, they go out into the world and they're like, I fucking love football. Why? I don't understand that. I try watching football and I'm like, this is weird. This is just human beings that have created these really arbitrary rules, and they are distracting themselves and have found entertainment in this display of physical action. Great for you if that's what you're really into, but my reality is very different when I watch football. In fact, it kind of grosses me out and it makes me feel weird in my body. And then my very sociology type mind breaks it apart into a bunch of different ways. And if you're around me, I'll probably ruin the experience for you. In my mind, I would be enjoying myself thoroughly if I was able to have a philosophical discussion about the intricacies of why football is so weird and how it impacts culture. So in that moment, two different realities, because the person who loves football probably doesn't want to hear about my interpretations of how that impacts the human brain and society and how it relates to patriarchy and yada yada. So reality is very subjective. That is at its basic form that I want you to consider. What makes up your reality? What makes you you and how you see things? As a psychic, I can go into the world and at times I will just like look at somebody's energy, not too invasively, but I really like looking at the general energy that somebody is bringing into a room. So sometimes I see that they have like an energy of a lot of plant life. I can tell that they are really earthy. They spend a lot of time in nature. Sometimes I see a lot of like fire energy coming off of them and I'm like, whoa, that person is ambitious, or like that person is like, their mind is just like boop, boop, boop. You know, I can tell all these like really cool, unique things about people if I just tune into the energy of it. I could also do it with collective energy. If I walk into a room, I can see what the collective energy is doing in a space. Not everybody has that reality. They go into the room and they're fixated on like, who's going to be checking me out? Or, oh, I'm feeling really insecure right now. Or, oh, I'm thinking about this thing that needs to get done. Something back at home, that conversation that I had earlier. Most people actually aren't present in the moment, maybe not even paying attention to the room. And not to say that I'm not that person sometimes, because I am. I also have my own lenses that I switch in and out of depending on my mood, that therefore influence the way that I see the reality around me. So this is the basic breakdown of parallel realities. We're all living different realities at the same time. So next part of this. How do we build realities into the future that really sustain us and make us grow, and where we can find happiness and meaningful participation with life? In my last video, I talked about how ignorance is bliss. And so you could choose a path where you ignore everything from the external realities around you. Some people do that. And simultaneously, you have like the positive of that. You also have the negative of that, where somebody can easily choose a reality and fixate on things that make them unhappy, on subjects that actually make them very judgmental, that actually fill them with hate. I have a family member who is like this, where, you know, when we get around this person, they have filled their reality with all kinds of information, all kinds of beliefs that make their energy feel like they are just trying to strangle everybody around them, because they want everybody around them to believe the exact same thing. And if they don't believe the same thing, how could they not? His reality just can't understand how somebody else's reality could be different. He knows the truth. That is the truth. I mean, that is how a lot of people function, right? Where once you get an idea in your mind, that is the reality. And there's just no way. There is so much evidence to back up this is the way that it is. Yeah, maybe there is truth to that reality. But if your beliefs make you unhappy and make it difficult for other people to be around you, your beliefs actually aren't serving anybody. If your beliefs make you feel emotion because there is something in the world that you're really passionate about and you want people to understand that this is a really important subject, that is okay, because we actually need that. As I mentioned in the last video, all of our realities are constantly reflecting back to one another. They are mirrors because the universe is in constant conversation with itself. I am the universe talking to you. You are the universe watching me right now in this moment. So it is really important for us to be tapping into, okay, on this planet, on a collective level, what's actually going on, what is impacting us. So we have the micro versions of that, of like the interpersonal, of like, I am finding that this law or this way of doing things doesn't help me to thrive as a human being, and I'd like to change a law, or I'd like to change a rule, because if this is impacting me, it's probably impacting other people in this way too. On the macro level, we're paying attention to things like, oh, the temperatures are rising on the planet right now. The oceans are starting to become very, very hot. We are starting to see flooding and fires to a degree that we have not seen before, not to mention all of the other types of environmental issues that are happening. So we just had that in Maui, where there are a lot of people communicating to us, this has really negatively impacted our experience as human beings on this planet. And at the same time, there's a long history of colonialism, tourism, and unhealthy agricultural practices that have influenced the island and have taken away autonomy from the people who live there, and therefore actually creating more of a situation where fires were more possible. And so we're having these conversations now, we're hearing the conversations now from the people who live on Maui who are saying, hey, we want our rights back. We want to be able to make decisions for ourselves because we actually live here, and we don't want these other people who have just come to our island to make decisions for us because we actually know the land, we know the history here, we have the culture here. It should be within our power to make decisions for us. So that is part of the reality, their reality that they're trying to communicate to the external world because other people's realities are trying to impose on them. So I want to bring up these examples because as we evolve collectively, it's important that we're receiving the feedback from the external world to guide the way that we are moving and evolving, to guide the way that we are progressing towards a healthier planet. I mentioned in my last video that we're not just going to become pure light. As we are moving through this progression of the development of our realities, it's really important for us to take feedback from the external world so that we can learn to be more personally responsible and more attuned to the ways that we impact the external world and the people and the other beings that are there. As we walk our evolutionary path, the more gentle we can be, the more thoughtful we can be, the more kind we can be, and the more that we can participate in building a healthier world consciously, thinking about the ways that, based on the feedback that we've received, how do we create more holistically sustainable places for people, for the environment, for ourselves, based on the care of these different areas. How might we develop communities and realities that are both individually and collectively amazing? Because it's possible. And there's so many of us who are thinking about this, working on it, acting on it, and creating these communities where we live. A couple videos ago, I talked about timelines, which I could probably talk about forever, but I do want to touch on that today about how the development of our realities will affect the timeline that you are living. To give you a definition of timeline, let's see if I can do this so that it's not too woo-woo, even though it is a woo-woo concept ultimately. Every moment, I have the ability to step into choices that make me feel alive, happy, that nourish my body, that take care of my relationships, and make me shine much brighter. And I can make decisions every single day that compound on one another and therefore enhance my life and the trajectory of my life. On the other hand, I can make choices or let circumstances impact me in a way that I don't treat my body as well, and I'm not as conscious about my relationships, and I'm not as in flow with the things I want to be doing, and don't get to live my life quite as vibrantly or happily. Those are two different timelines. I could choose either one at any time, but the more that I choose one, the more I live that life. Individually, we all have these timelines, and within it we have, a spectrum of different paths that we can take. The complexity, again, is infinity. So you can choose any mixture of all of this, and the spectrum goes from light to dark. It is multicolored. And so you are walking one of those paths forward. So that's you on an individual level. Collectively, we have that too. And collectively, it goes in every direction because, again, it's infinite. And we can see the ways that we are gravitating towards people who are making decisions like ourselves. So if you are making decisions where you are vibrant and thriving and happy, you are more likely to be finding other people who also are in that type of vibration and creating that type of life, and therefore building the communities and the structure to move into a world that is beautiful and happy and healthy for all people and all beings. On the other side, if you fill your mind with pollution and you take part in behaviors that just aren't very conscious, and your relationships kind of suck because you're also participating with that, like you're also part of the problem. You're maybe not living as authentically as you can. You don't forgive people very well. You like to point fingers, like whatever it is. And I'm not saying you personally, you might know somebody who's like this. That person is more likely to have communities around them that also fit that vibration. So then within this spectrum, we begin to have a fragmentation of realities that are even more distinct. So that if you live in this reality over here where it's really, really beautiful, you have less and less of a bridge to be able to understand the person who is going in this opposite direction. And over time, you see less and less of their realities to the point where they actually don't impact you. So that is what I see as we move into the future. We're going to see more of both the complexity fragmenting in every direction that you can imagine, and we'll see these distinct pathways begin to develop of what type of life you choose to live, what type of reality you choose to collectively co-create with the people around you, whether or not you're conscious of it. We got, again, the conscious side and the unconscious side. So I want you to be thinking about that, about what type of consciousness, what type of reality are you bringing to this planet. And as you move forward into the future, even as there are really intense things happening here, because it's only gonna get more shaky, it's only going to begin to break down more. And I say that not from a place of fear, I say that from a place of understanding how chaos creates breakthroughs. And when something is not going right, a relationship is not going right, it gets really, really intense before a break happens. And even after the break happens, it can still remain intense. Eventually it lets go. So we can see that right now on the planet. The planet is having a lot of issues. It's extremely polluted and we've taken way too many resources and we're not really sure how to live within our means. And so experiences are going to be coming our way that will help to put us into perspective, that will lead us more further into a track that will be more holistically, not only sustainable, but regenerative, so that we can then fuel our future. While we're going through these big changes, it's important to stay true to your values and make sure that your values are really aligned with the type of world that you want to live in. So if you want to live in a healthier, happier world, you really have to take a look at what types of beliefs that you have that are either benefiting you and other people, or what beliefs you might have that just benefit you. Because if your reality is trying to control somebody else's reality so intensely, there's something that somebody else is doing and you're like, I hate that. That is bad. They shouldn't do that. Well, if they're causing harm to lots of people, good. Like, let's have those conversations. If you just don't like what that person is doing because you think that it's just bad, like somebody being gay or trans or practicing a cultural tradition that you don't like or whatever it is, that is just you having a hard time with the idea that other realities exist. If you know that somebody is causing harm to somebody and that is within your reality, it is adjacent to your reality in a way that you can actually create benefit by having the conversations and having accountability, great. Like, move forward, especially if the realities are adjacent, they are your neighbors, they are people that you interact with in community. It is important for us to meet that friction so that we can continue to push our growth, evolution, and have the accountability that maybe by having the right types of conversations could unlock the awakening in others to begin to be more self-reflective and look at the ways that they are also treating the planet and themselves and other people. Again, we're the universe having a conversation with itself. So if you can have conversations with others, being a mirror, showing them how they are impacting the world, it might soften them enough so that they too can begin to make the journey towards a reality, a shared reality that actually will be better for the planet. Again, there's also going to be people that don't choose that path, and they're going to be going into a different type of reality that you won't be impacted by if you continue to walk the path of choosing to be a beacon unto the world, a light unto the world, of being unconditionally loving, forgiving, compassionate. Build those energies within your body, allow those to move through your energy field, attune yourself to holding that frequency, and it will keep you on the trajectory, on the path that you want to see. So I think I covered mostly what I wanted to today. This is a huge topic, and I know that I'm going to have to come back to it quite a few times. I'll probably continue to come back to it because it's always going to be relevant. I do want to know, what are your questions? What comes up for you? What is confusing to you? Thanks so much for watching today. Be sure to subscribe, like, share with a friend. I am still taking clients on right now at my discounted rate for just another couple of months. So get on my schedule soon, reach out to me. Again, thanks for being here with me today. You guys are awesome, and I look forward to seeing you next time.